Hey there, this is Mr. Icarus, and welcome to yet another edition of Doom Mod Madness. This time round, we are checking out Heretical Doom, a gameplay mod that brings you the weapons of Heretic, but with a little bit more oomph, and a few intriguing changes to boot. The first thing that certainly comes to mind is the fact that this mod actually includes a leveling system. You can see my current level in the top right hand corner, and you can also see an XP gauge in the top left. If I fill it, I go up a level. Pretty simple. But killing demons isn't what increases my XP here. It's actually the items that you pick up during the course of a level, not to mention the secret areas that you may discover along the way. Now the benefits of leveling up here are twofold. Firstly, you'll get an increase on your maximum health, which currently sits at, oh wait, no, now it's 93. It did start off at 90, but the level up gave me a few extra points. And the second benefit is that if you level up enough, you'll soon be able to access the various alt fires of the weapons you pick up during your gameplay. Now, it's that particular aspect of the leveling system that I find the most intriguing, because it gives it a little more than the old immediate gratification kick. I mean, sure, the weapons that you get in the base form are pretty satisfying to use and reasonably powerful, but if you want to use those special moves, if you want to use those alt fires, you're going to have to work on that leveling system. Basically, this is the kind of mod where if you want to see everything there is to see when it comes to the gameplay mechanics, you're going to have to be playing this for the long haul. For those of you out there who feel like you might get a little bored before you have the chance to power through multiple maps and grind up those levels to access the various alt fires, fear not. There is an item here just for you, and that would be the Tome of Power. Now this is an item that many will recognize from Heretic. It was a power-up that would greatly enhance your existing weaponry, but here it is available right off the bat. The only thing you need to activate it is enough mana in the blue bar on the left, and once it's activated, that mana will trickle down and eventually deplete, but as long as there's juice in the tank, you'll be able to use these even more beefed up versions of your current weapons. Intriguingly, the Tome of Power actually feeds back into the leveling system, because if you attempt to use the alt fire while this is active, it will give you an even higher level requirement for the even more devastating alt fires that are available when wielding the Tome of Power. It's actually a pretty ingenious progression system, giving you just enough to keep you interested at the lower levels, while tempting you with the prospect of some really juicy stuff once you hit the higher levels. In terms of the other power-ups, it's a bit of a mixed bag. You've got a torch for those dark and dingy areas. You've got the protective armor power-up to help you tank that additional damage should you need to. You've got the Wings of Wrath, allowing you to break the flow of any given level. And you've also got the one item that means I won't make it through this video without making a JoJo reference. Out of all of them though, I'd still say that the Tome of Power is probably the most involved power-up of them all. The thing that you'll probably keep coming back to, especially what with it being tied up in the leveling system. But that's not to say that you still won't find interesting ways to use and abuse the rest of the power-ups. Ultimately though, I am a fan of having all of these particular power-ups just readily available, provided you have enough mana, of course. It certainly lends to the feeling of you being a badass death-dealing mage. Of course you'd have some powerful and useful spells immediately on hand. Heretical Doom also features a whole host of other useful items for you to take advantage of. It's just that they're not exclusively tied to the mana bar. These will be things such as the quartz flasks, which can repair up to 50 points of health upon use. You've got chaos devices, which I think teleport you back to the start of the stage if you're in a spot of bother. You've got morph ovums, which, if I remember correctly, turn your enemies into chickens, and I'm sure there's one other that I'm forgetting, but where my issue kind of begins with this system is you've essentially got two sets of inventories to scroll through, and binding those and remembering which keys to use in the heat of battle can be a little bit of a nightmare. Just to give you some idea of what I'm on about, I've got a pretty fancy mouse. It's the kind where you can click the mouse wheel to the left or the right and it actually counts as separate buttons. I've got that assigned to the mana items, and when I click in the mouse wheel, it activates the item. It's a pretty nice solution, but when you're dealing with the standard inventory, you've got to have a separate set of binds to be able to scroll through that and activate those as well, and that's where it gets a little messy and complicated. I mean, sure, you could use quick binds for certain things, but nothing I tried really felt like it worked. And then you've got to consider the Flechettes, if I'm saying that correctly. Basically grenades that come in 3 different varieties. You've got the explosive standard variety, you've got one that acts as some kind of gravity mine that draws enemies in and then explodes them, and then you've got one that is basically noxious fart gas. All of these have their own dedicated keybinds. Considering all of these options pretty much turns my brain to mush, but at least with this particular thing I can suggest a solution. Turn the Flechettes into an actual weapon, something your character can hold and then just cycle through the different modes, rather than having it as something that requires its own dedicated buttons, because, yeah, that can sometimes stop the flow of combat dead in its tracks while you're stuck fiddling with keys and trying to desperately throw the correct thing at the enemies, and instead, you just, drop a fart bomb instead, and it's just embarrassing for all involved. Hey, you know how I said this is a long haul kind of mod where you'd have to take the time to build up the levels to see everything that it has to offer? Well, turns out if you type in IDKFA, it gives you a level up every time you do it, so I just typed in IDKFA 50 times. Took a little while, but I feel like it was ultimately worth it, because not only do I now have access to all of the weapons, I now have access to all of the required levels in order to use all of the alt fires of all of the weapons. And that is something that also includes this. That's pretty badass. The Fire Mace also makes an appearance here. It shoots explosive balls. What's not to love? The alt fire, I'm pretty sure, just lays mines as well, but where things get really interesting is with this thing. I don't know what it's called, but it shoots ghosts. I'm reasonably sure that's what it does. The alt fire also shoots ghosts, but with a twist. Because these ghosts appear to be sexy mage ladies that beat the shit out of your enemies for you. I really like the alt fire on this. I really do. Anyway, I know what you're really here for. What happens when you activate the Tome of Power and take advantage of all of its fully leveled glory? Well, you pretty much wreck face. Anything you pick here is pretty much guaranteed to make your enemies splat. Even the wooden pole that you begin with, even the gauntlets, which get a snazzy red lightning instead of green. The alt fire kind of remains the same. It's kind of like a mini BFG that saps a bit of your health to do so. The wand is pretty much the wand on steroids. Everything is pretty much guaranteed to go splat when you're using this in conjunction with the Tome of Power. Crossbow doesn't change much, but the Dragon Claw, good grief, the sheer force exerted by that enhanced alt fire flings you back every time you use it, making the primary feel a little bit weedy. The Hellstaff remains as awesome as ever, with or without the Tome of Power. The primary fire essentially gains more projectiles, allowing you to create even bigger piles of gibbage, and the alt fire is pretty much a lightning gun. A uber powerful lightning gun, in fact, that is actually quite satisfying to use against large groups of enemies. So overwhelming is the power of the Hellstaff, however, that extended usage can occasionally cause your frames to tank, so you might want to be careful with the usage of that one. The Phoenix Rod pretty much just turns into a flamethrower, which I gotta admit is a little disappointing. Something better about just flinging explosive projectiles into enemy faces. And on that subject, the Fire Mace returns with even bigger, bouncing explosive cluster balls, just slapping into demon faces, causing death and destruction wherever they land. Last but certainly not least, we have the Hand of Death, as I've taken to calling it, which, rather than firing ghosts, now just launches concentrated balls of explodey demon death. Alt fire, as far as I can tell, still launches sexy mage ladies, so all is in order here. And that pretty much wraps up the extended mayhem that the Tome of Power can unleash. So yeah, I'd say it's pretty good. Pretty damn satisfying, especially when you get to the stage where you've got access to most of these lethal alt fires, but for some, the long road to unlocking those additional levels may prove a little too long and winding. Shame there isn't some kind of shortcut, like typing IDKFA in 50 times in a row. In any case, if you're planning on rocking up with this particular mod, I'd heavily advise going for a megawatt of the 32 map variety, because you're gonna need them levels. You're gonna need them preferably full of items for you to hoover up, because as I mentioned earlier, that's how the XP acquisition works here in Heretical Doom. Another thing to watch out for is the fact that the magical weapons here need to be recharged. That's something that caught me completely off guard. The first time it happened, I thought I was accessing some kind of overcharge mode for my weapon, but no, it was just the fact that you need to stop firing for a bit, let the energy absorb into your weapon, and then you can carry on with the mayhem. But if you're not aware of that, it can catch you off guard in a few hairy situations and result in a few unfortunate deaths. Another thing you might have noticed during the course of gameplay is that a few of the items here that you can pick up are actually 3D voxel models, which I actually think is pretty neat. There is a limit to how far 3D voxel models should go, in my opinion, though. I don't think that anything as far as the replacement for the explosive barrels, for example, should be 3D voxels, but when it comes to health vials and armor helmets, all that kind of stuff, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just wondering if in future versions of this they'll actually go for all of the ammo pickups being 3D voxels as well. Could be interesting. In any case, if you're interested in what you've seen here today, the link for Heretical Doom will be in the description below, as will be the download for the map pack that I use for this, which is Memento Mori 2. Heavily recommended, very interesting maps, gonna have to play more of it. In the meantime, however, it's about time I give a great big thank you to my wonderful patrons over on Patreon. Thank you so very much for your contributions, and thank you for helping to make content like this possible. If you're interested in lending a hand and supporting the channel, you can find the link to my Patreon page also in the description below. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. Feel free to let me know what you thought in the comments, and feel free to suggest any mods you'd like to see me cover in future episodes of Doom Mod Madness. This has been Mr. Icarus. Thank you very much for watching. Icarus out.